Good. Hello, my name is Falme Davis, and today I'll be refuting the claim that paying professional athletes millions of dollars is an ineffective use of funds. The advocates first had three secondary claims. One, that other careers with the same amount of pressure, stress, and sacrifice are paid substantially less. Two, society has needs that not amount of money can fund. And three, most athletes are not financially responsible for their money anyways. To address the first claim that other careers with the same amount of pressure and stress and sacrifice are paid substantially less, the advocate uses the military as an example. He states that the average NBA player makes $5.1 million a year, and the yearly income of the average U.S. soldier is $32,000. While this is true, he leaves out the benefits of being in the military, such as free health care, tax deductions, free college, in and after enlisting in the military, and various other benefits for the soldier and their families. All benefits that NBA players have to pay for. He also fails to mention that rank plays a part in the paying of soldiers in the military. Chrome.com and Army.com both break down the ranks of soldiers as E1 through E9. In the Army, 74% of enlistees are in ranks E1 through E5. In the Navy, 70%. In the Marines, 80%. And in the Air Force, 70%. So what this means is that the reason that the average soldier is paid $32,000 is because the large amount of enlistees in the military are of lower ranks. So when someone first enlists in the Army, they start with a pay of $17,000, and that goes up with rank. So what this means is that if 74% of people in the Army are in the ranks of E1 through E5, and the pay in E5 being $34,000, given by Army.com, that would mean that the average income of these soldiers would be low. The advocate stated his second claim, which was that society has needs that amount of money can fund. One thing that the advocate fails to address is that the NBA in particular, which he talks about, are privately funded. Each team is owned by a private company, private owners, private investors, and he also doesn't address that the state that these teams are in also contribute to these teams' wealth. Cities use tax dollars to pay for new arenas. They use tax dollars to pay for these teams' electrical bills, water bills, and different various bills that these arenas require. Forbes.com tells. The average NBA team is worth $1.36 billion. Now, the advocate uses cancer research and orgs that volunteer and help the homeless as examples as organizations that these funds can go to. But the advocate doesn't address the facts that the NBA gives to the Salvation Army, their own organization, NBA Cares, and the Susan G. Komen research organization for breast cancer, and many more. The advocate's third claim was that most athletes are not financially responsible for their money anyways, so they should not be paid, these millions of dollars. Personal choice and personal mishaps are not reasons to change a system. The advocate uses Mike Tyson as an example. Mike Tyson made $300 million over the course of his career, but due to many personal choices, he had to file for bankruptcy in 2006. He uses this to say that most athletes should be paid less, and this goes back to what I said before, is that personal choice and personal mishaps of an individual should not be used as reason to say that someone doesn't deserve to be paid. Many of these athletes work day and night throughout their entire lives. A lot of them miss out on different opportunities because they're dedicated to the sport that they are involved in. The advocate says that 60% of NBA players file for bankruptcy within 5 years of retirement. But Heavy Magazine also says that among these 60%, 40% have either agents that were hired within the first interview, which means that their agent process that these athletes go through is not in depth, and a lot of times they end up with agents that are money hungry and aren't looking in the best interest of the players. And of that 60%, also another 30% of these players are under 21. So what it means is that many players come into the NBA not knowing about money, not knowing how money works, and you're handing them millions of dollars from day one. So, many of them, especially leaving college within their first or second year of college, tend to not have a general knowledge of how the economics and business side of the sport work. In conclusion, the advocate fails to prove exactly why paying professional athletes millions of dollars is an ineffective use of funds, and a better claim would have been that states contributing to professional athletic organizations is an ineffective use of funds, or two, the United States government ineffectively pays its soldiers. Thank you.
All right, the structural material is all worked out fine at the beginning. You preview everything, so that's easy to follow. You get on the first point, and it really becomes an argument about the choice of comparison that the advocate made when they were doing a military comparison. And you have a long explanation about how the military is paid and how many of the soldiers and Marines and sailors and so on are in those early ranks, and so they get paid the lowest. You do point out that there are a vast number of benefits that are not accounted for in those costs. I thought that that was a reasonable press. But of course, the whole argument comes down, where are you? I know you're there somewhere. The whole argument comes down to this value argument that says, well, the advocate is saying this is more valuable than this. And the determination of value is one that's economic in nature. I think that you miss an opportunity. By the way, I think another thing, an obvious argument to point out is that you need, whatever it is, our military has 2 million people in it. You know how many players there are in the NBA? Not close to 2 million. So you're talking about something that's vastly different in terms of numbers, and so that's one of the reasons that there are these pay discrepancies. And more people can serve in those jobs than can perform at the top levels of the NBA. So it's really, I think you need to make the argument that says it's really about the it's a determination of the value of the talent that a particular person has that is influencing this pay decision. It's not what their contribution is per se to society. That's what the advocate's talking about. But you're saying this is, when it comes to an economic determination, there are millions of people that can fulfill these jobs at this particular price. There are only a few dozen people who can fulfill these jobs, and that's one of the reasons the price is high. I think that that's just a simple argument that's easy to make, and then you don't need to do quite as much a comparison of every military position and all the ranks. I did like the attempt there, but in essence, I think that gives validation to the argument that the advocate's presenting, which is not really what you want to do. I think you want to go at it in a different way. On the second argument, I did like the one claim that suggests that the NBA and probably other sports franchises do make substantial contributions to a variety of charitable enterprises, so it's not as if they're indifferent to those kinds of things. But I like you had a statistic that says the average NBA team's worth $1.3 billion. Right, so let's contrast to that to how much money gets spent on all of these services that the advocate says are important or necessary. So if we're talking about health care for the poor or the elderly, food for the poor, any of those kinds of things, you could check and see how much money we spend each year, not just the total value of that, but each year on all those services, and it is far outstripped the value of any of these teams, and the notion that we are not attending to those things is a premise that I think that the advocate has made that would be problematic to defend in the long run. But the other argument that says, look, they also make contributions in those things too, I think that's perfectly fine. And then the third point, you basically come down to the argument that says this shouldn't be the basis on which we make a decision like this. That's people's private choices. Maybe they make bad choices. We're back, this is all a value argument that's being presented here. And so you're kind of trying to dodge around making a value judgment about these kinds of things. But this is the closest you come to it. It says, look, if they're too stupid to keep their money, that's not the fault of the economic system. There are reasons why that is a problem for them. And there might be answers for that, but how that changes whether or not we should be paying somebody for what they can contribute for the period of time, I don't know that that would be a legitimate justification. Let's go back to the military. Let's suppose that somebody in the military went bankrupt after they were in the military. Should we go back and change their pay scale because they didn't know how to handle their money when they got out, or they made a bad decision? That doesn't seem like it would be a reasonable inference to make. And like I said, you're kind of dancing around a value argument and without trying to actually make it. All right, thank you.